No, that was bad. That was bad. I had to swallow the whole time.
Hello everyone, it's Radio Free Innsmouth episode 168. We are continuing to climb out of the dungeon synth hole back into regular black metal type stuff. And what better way to do that than to re-examine one of the black metal bands that definitely heavily influenced the dungeon synth subgenre, even if they weren't dungeon synth themselves. Of course, I'm talking about Summoning.
이거는 못 고르지.
Now, I know what you're thinking. Didn't you already cover Summoning? Yeah, way back on like episode 8 or something. But having listened to that episode, it kind of sucks. It had a decent Johnny Quest drop in the beginning of it, and that's about it. The jokes weren't amazing. And it was before I started getting really in-depth with like cutting up samples of the music to actually show you what the hell it is that I'm talking about.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
The sound quality of my voice was all shit, which doesn't make any fucking sense since I was using the exact same setup. I just know more about how to record things properly nowadays. But the main mistake I made there was trying to cover like all of Summoning in like 8 minutes or however long that was. Because Summoning is a very, very, very big topic. Nowadays, they're pretty famous. You know, people know them as like the dynamic duo, Silenius and Protector. They're more into being composers than musicians, if that makes sense. So they sort of like individually work on songwriting ideas for, you know, like a 4 or 5 year period, come together and collaborate, put stuff out. And outside of that, they don't really like practice their instruments at all. It's more about like actually just arranging the songs. It's got the crazy multi-layered drum machine parts, all like, you know, like weird layers of guitars, really heavy keyboard, but it weren't always like this.
It wasn't always like this. I had a
Drummer.
once.
Early Summoning is a much different kettle of fish than what springs into most people's mind when you mention the band Summoning. But to investigate that, we're gonna have to go way back in time to early 90s Austria.
단발보단 긴 머리가 좋아요.
Alright, you got the time machine ready?
난 긴 깐나파.
Alright, hit it. Alright, here we are, early 90s Austria. Wait a fucking second, what the hell's going on here?
언니는 앞머리 있는 게 좋아합니까?
This isn't right at all.
이번에 처음으로
Oh wait, I see what happened here. You put in early 90s Australia, not Austria.
And I said, oh, what are you doing, mate? Like, you can't be leaving the scene.
그리고 진짜 제가 해보고 싶은 게
Nah, I get it, you don't speak any English that well. Alright, here we go. Austria this time. Well, this looks like Austria, but oh god. Get us out of here right now. Susan isn't gonna like this. What did you do? Too many decades back! Oh, thank God. Okay, I think we're finally in early 90s Austria, back when something existed called the ABMS. No, BM does not stand for what you think it stands for.
Eat that, ladies.
Austrian Black Metal Syndicate, a group of bands and otherwise, you know, just kind of musical projects. There's Golden Dawn, Vuzem, who later on turned into a Hollandthon, a band that probably more people are aware of, Trifixion, Pazuzu, and Abigor, and for the purposes of this episode, Summoning. Pretty much everybody in all those bands was like involved in each other's bands. And this version of Summoning actually is a 3-man band that's almost really a 4-man band, because you have Silenius and Protector, the two main guys behind the music. Silenius also doing vocals for Abigor at this point. There's also a drummer named Trifixion, and there's another dude named Pazuzu.
Stick your cock up her ass, you motherfucking worthless cocksucker.
Who I guess isn't like officially a member of the band, but he's on like all of the early Summoning releases, so I'd say he's pretty much an official member. And they're not playing the wacky keyboardy like Dead Can Dance worshipping type stuff that they would later on to go on to play there. Okay, to be fair, there is a decent amount of dungeon synth even on the first Summoning album. At least in some of the like little ambient segues, intros and outros and whatnot. Like this right here, definitely you could see the later Summoning guys doing something like this. It's not as lush and electronic as their later stuff, but even at an early point in their career, they have, you know, the pretty pounding percussive drum machine echoey stuff with like layered kind of keyboard fugues. So yeah, no, that definitely is there, but the bulk of this release is more
Hold your dick for 1 second, you fungal rim job.
raw, melodic, super fucking fast black metal. With really good drums from Trifixion, who apparently did not get along with the rest of the summoning guys, and it's a shame that that didn't work out, because even if he is a dickhead according to them, I think he's a considerable musical talent. And the drums really add a lot to this release. I also like how it's produced. You have this like really wet, echoey drum sound, and then the guitars are like bone dry and sharp. Interesting contrast. Vocals are super fucking echoey. But yeah, it's like really catchy and memorable. For some reason, a lot of fans of Later Summoning tend to shit on this album, and I think it's just because they're
gay nerds
that don't like proper black metal, because this album's fucking solid. My favorite moments on it are in the song Flight of the Nazgul, which despite the dark subject matter is kind of a pretty happy sounding song. I love how loud the bass is and how it's kind of doing counterpoint stuff against the guitars. And the drumming is really good, kind of got an early Flo Mounier feel to it. This is sort of like the main melody of the song right here. That bass playing, fucking good stuff. Actually very similar to the things they would do with guitars on Oathbound, these like jumping arpeggiated phrases. But yeah, this is like a really long melodic phrase, so even in their more black metal days, the very, very long form melodies were an important part of the summoning sound. Check out this layering. That's good stuff right there. They have a very epic sense of composition. But yeah, like this entire melody takes almost 30 seconds to go all the way through it. So very like long-winded kind of winding melodies. Always a part of the summoning sound, even in the black metal days. I also like those vocals a lot. Very nasty sounding. And then we get into a bit of dynamics. Because in this song and a couple of the other ones, there's a push-pull thing going on between some very interesting kind of like early proto-dungeon synth stuff and the guitar riffs, like the more guitar-heavy portions. Because if you pay attention to the melody here, it actually is a counter melody to that main guitar melody of the song, like a little bit of a variation on it. Just being played with a very different set of instrumental voices. I love that they use this like really echoey piano and the drums in this. Like the timpanis, perfect stuff. Especially when they combine them with the bells like they were doing earlier. Very epic scope orchestral. I mean, it's called Flight of the Nazgul. It feels like you're flying around. And back into the black metal it goes. See that riff comes back? Really good stuff. Cannot recommend this album enough. And I think it's kind of a shame that, as much as I love Later Summoning, like it was one of the first black metal bands I got into back when I was a little kid, as much as I love Later Summoning, I kind of wish they had done maybe like another album in this style, or maybe kept this style going as like a side project. But, you know, like I said, they didn't get along with the drummer Trifixion at all. And it's through him that we actually get a continuation of that sound, because after he was ejected from Summoning, we had several more projects from him that were picking up on that style. The most famous of these was Pervertum, which featured that similarly loud bass and the same very clonky kind of Blasphemy Made Flesh style drum sound, which I like a lot. There's a decent amount of progressive stuff going on there, incorporations of acoustic guitars, and like I said, that very loud and very melodic bass backing up the guitars. Interesting stuff. Plenty of melody there for you. Some people really hate the vocals on the one Pervertum album. I think they're not great. Bit of an acquired taste, but they don't ruin it for me. And the drums are still good, and it sounds like a continuation of that early Summoning sound, so I am a big fan of that shit. Gotta like melodic stuff like that. Prime Jubcore, that one Pervertum album.
I got the point, buddy.
He also had a much stranger sounding project. Maybe his attempt at a Burzum, because it's all just him doing everything. And it's called Trifixion. So he named it after himself, and he plays all the instruments. And this was a cool album too. Very different from Pervertum, and also pretty different from early Summoning. I mean, it is keyboard heavy like Later Summoning, there's that, but it's very dark and kind of strange. I know a lot of people also don't enjoy this album at all, but I think it's pretty good stuff. It's got the same like super acrobatic drumming, and I really love the very odd synth patches he chose. So that Trifixion album, also pretty good stuff.
Did you say that?
Then we get to his third, a major post-summoning project known as Werewolf. This one kind of takes on a slightly more fascist cast. You know, you got like songs about sun wheels and whatnot. A lot more kind of like Marshall keyboards and an overall very Marshall feel. Maybe the most normal sounding of his post-summoning projects, because a lot of times it isn't that far off from Marduk, as you're hearing right now. I don't know, for some people this might actually be the best of his projects. It's actually my least favorite, though I do like it, especially when the keyboards get a little bit heavier, as you're hearing right now. But yeah, Trifixion's out of summoning, and so is Pazuzu. But Pazuzu starts up a side project, or rather just a main project, because it's named Pazuzu, and it's him doing most of it. But he has contributions from the summoning guys, and that first Pazuzu album, which is not metal at all, it's neoclassical darkwave. But it almost sounds like a dry run for concepts that would become prominent in later summoning material, like the keyboards, medieval atmosphere, clean vocals. So an interesting little historical fragment, but if you ask me, Pazuzu actually got better once these summoning guys completely divorced themselves from it. Because later Pazuzu is really good, I don't know, neoclassical darkwave. It's fucking dungeon synth. It's close enough, dude. I mean, it uses more acoustic instruments than like most bands in that genre do, but it feels like dungeon synth to me. And I just thought it would be important, since I gave all that time to Trifixion. The other ex-summoning guy did some cool stuff too, Mr. Pazuzu here. Whole lot of like vampirism, decaying medieval castles, that kind of thing. If that's your bag, check out the like later Pazuzu albums, because they are very cool.
Very cool.
Very cool. Very cool.
How neat is that?
I believe we have thoroughly entombed that early era of summoning at this point. We covered the debut album itself. We covered what the guys that left summoning ended up doing. So let's get to summoning proper. And this is summoning proper. As much as I enjoy that first summoning album, and I think it's highly underrated by the summoning fan base, the second summoning album is almost like this is their actual debut album. This is where they came up with the sound that they've been developing for the past 2 decades. The name of this album is Minas Morgul. It's one of my favorite summoning albums, maybe just because I heard it first, but I don't know, I think it's really fucking good. This song is called Bugbears, and you can hear they got this like drum machine going. It's not even programmed to sound like a drummer. It's very much like black metal composition from a more electronic music standpoint. You have this very cyclical kind of like looping Burzum-esque melody being accented by that horn section over there. And like just lots of thunderclouds, very Wagnerian stuff. Big fan of this song. It's a bit deceptive for summoning, because like parts like this are, you know, that's pretty close to normal black metal, kinda. I mean, the drums are still very, very, very industrial, but compared to like how weird this album gets later on, this song right here, Logburs, is much more standard kind of black metal shit. But don't you worry, it gets into weird shit real quick. One of my favorite parts of this album is the duology of the songs Orthanc, which you're hearing right now, and Angolians, right next to each other on the album. Orthanc is all about these pounding drum machines and very sparse, nasty, lo-fi synths. Very dark stuff. And I like how they just keep layering on drum machines and like spooky synth noises. But then watch what happens on the next track. You get into Angolians, and that melody from the prior track is still going, but now it's a very lush, melodic black metal guitar riff with some very sparkly synths in the background. I like the wide range of emotions that are displayed by summoning, particularly on those 2 songs. I also really love the vocals on this album. Right there, that's Protector. Selenius also does vocals on other songs. They actually never really do trade-offs. It's always one or the other doing vocals, and they're both real good. But as dark and spooky as that one is, one of my other favorite moments on this album is Legend of the Master Ring, which is downright happy sounding and very, very danceable. Watch this, very Depeche Mode right here. That little synth harmonica thing there, like that. Very Eurodance. Interesting stuff. And then there's Selenius on vocals, if you want to do a compare-contrast on their different vocal styles. Interesting, like, the keyboard is leading the song, and then you kind of have just the guitar doing accents. And it just builds and builds and gets more exuberant Very celestial and happy sounding. Big fan of Legend of the Master Ring. Big fan of this whole album, but that whole like Angolian and then like Legend of the Master Ring stick out to me. It's pretty much a classic album all the way through, no complaints. And with that, I think that's a pretty decent introduction to like that first era of summoning, moving from some very like raw, nasty sounding melodic black metal into very trance-like, weird, ambient, almost sort of like dungeon synth, but with like guitars and shrieks. Hard band to describe. Also a hard band to take influence from, because all the bands that are influenced by them, like actually heavily influenced by them, literally just sound like summoning. You got Caladan Brood from the US.
Last time I checked, this was the United States of fucking America.
You got Kinstrife and Blood from Australia.
And he goes, don't be a hero, mate. And I said, I'm not trying to be a hero, but the police are coming.
But lest we think that's going to be it for summoning, it really isn't, because although on that second album they definitely kind of fully established their very idiosyncratic sound, they pulled it in all sorts of weird directions over the next 2 decades. So this is definitely going to be a multi-parter. Hopefully I'll see you for the second part next week.
If you don't behave, I'm gonna have to bonk you with my trident, and it kinda hurts. It's very, very heavy. It's very heavy. That will leave a very large goose egg on your head.